What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down this Thursday Night Football Showdown slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. And we have the pleasure of watching the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Carolina Panthers. And while this game doesn't look that great on paper, it's PJ Walker versus Marcus Mariota. Last time these guys faced off just a couple weeks ago, October 30th, it was a 37-34 game in the Falcons' favor. Now, we're not in the Dome this time. We're at home in Carolina. Not my home, so I don't know why I worded it that way. But nonetheless, I've seen worse games on paper. 43.5 point over under here, 3-point spread. Well, there's not that many fun players to talk about. Let's do it anyway because we have no choice. And if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell, and what we do specifically in these showdown videos, we go position by position, team by team, so we're nice and orderly here. And then we'll build a single entry tournament build-ish lineup as we progress through it, just to see what fits. Please don't copy and paste it. And then at the end, I'll run the optimizer that has my projections and ownership projections currently set in place on Wednesday morning to see who's popping the most as of right now. And hey, if that sounds great and fine and dandy to you, well, the one thing you can do in return for me, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, hit that bell so you get notified whenever I post new content. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or if you just want to make fun of me, leave those down in the comments section down below. And as always, we will start with quarterbacks. If you want access to the sheet, link down below in the description. It's got access to all the projections that I do reference, ownership projections, the cheat sheets, and I do cover other sports as well, including the NBA each and every single day. But anyway, let's talk about these two studs. Marcus Mariota, $10,200. Then we have PJ Walker, $9,600, who actually got benched for Baker Mayfield at some point last week versus Cincinnati. Had a horrendous game. But in the game that he faced versus the Falcons just a couple of weeks ago, I mean, he did quite well. But we'll start with Marcus Mariota here first. Not much nice things to say about either of these guys. I will say the Falcons have the higher implied team total here, so he's going to project a little bit better for me, but he also offers you a little bit more rushing upside. 173 passing yards per game, though. 1 passing touchdown. Only throwing the ball around 21 times per game. Under a 70% completion percentage. The one redeemable quality here is this 35 rushing yards per game. That's kind of like a built-in passing touchdown floor, at least somewhat close to it. And the Panthers are 28th DVA versus the pass this season, despite being pretty much mid-pack versus fantasy quarterbacks. If this was a main slate, I'm not playing Mariota, but since we're on a showdown slate, yeah, we're forced to have some shares. And I don't think he's a bad captain option. If I had to choose between him or PJ Walker in the captain spot, I think I would go with Mariota just because there's more rushing upside. Now with PJ Walker here at $9,600, gets a dream matchup versus the Falcons. They've been bleeding points this season defensively versus the pass, 29th DVA versus the pass, and also 27th versus fantasy quarterbacks, aka allowing the 6th most points per game to the position. And PJ Walker, while he's obviously not been good this year, I mean, throwing the ball 17 times per game and 124 passing yards and basically nothing in the rushing department, he did get around 20 fantasy points versus the Falcons. I think 317 passing yards, if I remember correctly, and also added 20 yards on the ground. So while I'm not expecting much, it's a dream matchup here. And if I'm using a lot of DJ Moore, I'm going to have to pair that with PJ Walker. And moving over to our lineup, let's do something I never thought I would do before. Let's plug in PJ Walker. That sounds awful out loud. And then I'm also gonna try to jam in Marcus Mariota as well. I mean, just two absolute stud quarterbacks. Feel great about it. Love spending about $20,000 on those two players. Leaves us under $8,000 for the last remaining spots. And we'll move on from there. All right, moving on to running backs. Both teams have a bit of a mess here this weekend. So we'll start with the Atlanta Falcons here first. Then we have CPAT up top. Insane price tag for a guy that played under 40% of the snaps last week. Did get 2 touchdowns, though, so it obviously worked out. But he's nearly $12,000, $14K over on FanDuel. You also have Alger here at $6,200, and then we have Caleb Huntley at $4,800. And obviously, Keith Smith plays snaps, but I mean, as far as fantasy purposes are concerned, not going to do you anything good. So looking at the touch distribution this year, so like I mentioned, Patterson last week only played 38% of the snaps. First came back from injury, though, still was good. I mean, he got 2 touchdowns, and he's going to be the featured back here, and he's got plenty of upside. On the season, smaller sample size, but close to 6 yards per carry, 85 rushing yards, 14.5 rushing attempts. Tyler here, 12 rushing attempts per game, 46 rushing yards, although these statistics are a bit skewed because guys have been out, other guys have been starting. So for me, yes, CPAT is going to be the one you want to get the most to. The problem is, man, $12,000 nearly. If you're plugging in DJ Moore, you're plugging in both quarterbacks, maybe you want to get a guy like Kyle Pitts in, you're starting to run out of money quickly. So he's not going to be a main priority for me, but I will have no problem plugging him in if the situation arises where he fits in my lineup, because the Panthers have not been good versus the run this year. Now, last week's performance from Joe Mixon is definitely going to skew those numbers a bit. They are now 3rd in fantasy points allowed per game. Like it's pretty bad after a near 50-some point outing from Joe Mixon. So that's definitely going to hurt the numbers on the season after one performance. But still 115 rushing yards per game and 23rd DVA versus the pass. And then moving on to the Panthers, they also have a tricky situation because it looks like Hubbard is going to be back this week. So it's not going to be Deontay Foreman being the main show here. And then we also saw Blackshear last week at 4 targets. He put on over 30% of the snaps. But with Hubbard coming back, I'm assuming it's going to be a very split backfield. Foreman had a great game versus the Falcons a couple of weeks ago. If you played him in DFS that week, you were having a great time. It's just now with Hubbard coming back, I would expect the snaps to probably be somewhat 50-50. I don't think Blackshear is really going to have much relevance. If you're playing him at $5,000, I would not feel confident in that whatsoever. But I actually like the price point on Hubbard here. I mean, $5,500 versus a pretty bad Falcons defense. If they're going to see split snaps, I mean, I like the $2,000 discount. Although with Foreman performing so well versus the Falcons a couple of weeks ago, I think there's a decent chance they try to get him involved first. And if he has the hot hand, he'll probably see the most opportunities in the game. But if he does struggle at some point, you'll probably see Hubbard taking over. Just my 2 cents there. I think both are playable, but I'm personally going to be taking the $2,000 discount on Hubbard just a little bit more. And moving over to the lineup, I don't think we can afford Patterson in this build because I'm probably going to plug in DJ Moore. Do have both quarterbacks. I would like to get a pass catcher. I don't mind the price tag on Hubbard, though. He's only $5,800, assuming he's returned. He did practice fully. That puts me at over $8,000 for the last couple of spots. I think that puts us in a good position. If you wanted to go the Foreman route, that's going to leave you just under $7,500, so not a huge difference. But just for this build specifically, let's play Hubbard. I'm not saying he's my favorite play on the slate, but I just talked about running backs, and I want to see if he fits. And moving on to the wide receivers, we'll start with the Panthers group here first, which is basically a 3-man show with one main threat. That's DJ Moore up top, $9,200. And the fact that he's only $800 more than Terrace Marshall, who I know has been good the past couple of weeks, just seems a little low on the price tag there. So I'm assuming DJ Moore is going to have some very heavy ownership here. We'll obviously see that in a little bit. But it's DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall, and then we also have Shea Smith. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Shea Smith. Either way, $3,600 for a guy that's playing well over half the snaps. Doesn't sound terrible to me, but just not really getting that much opportunity. But looking at the target distribution this year, DJ Moore obviously leads the way. 27% target share, over 7 targets per game, and a 44% market share of the team's air yards. He was busting pretty hard versus Atlanta a couple weeks ago. Ended up going off, I think, well over 30 fantasy points. Caught that, 50-yard-ish touchdown, 60-yard touchdown at the end of the game. And obviously had a fantastic day, so we were very happy with the output. But overall this year, it's been a little bit hit or miss. Baker Mayfield obviously did not do him any favors. And with PJ Walker being back, he always seems to favor him a lot more. So yeah, DJ Moore, probably my favorite play in the slate. And the Falcons obviously suck versus fantasy wide receivers. They're dead last, 32nd versus the position, allowing nearly 50 points per game and over 200 receiving yards, in addition to being 29th DVA versus the pass. So yeah, fire up DJ Moore, Terrace Marshall. Wish he was a bit cheaper, but plays almost all the snaps, and the targets have definitely been there the past couple of weeks, so he's certainly playable, but definitely a tournament option with him being priced so high. I mean, right there with DJ Moore. And then Smith, obviously going to be a bit of a flyer there, but does provide value at $3,600. Then moving on to the Falcons, another pretty much 3-man show here. You have Drake London, $8,200. Zacchaeus, $5,400. Then Damiere Byrd at $4,400, who has an insane ADOT of 29.2 this year. If you're looking for a guy that can break a slate off of one play, Byrd is your guy. Now, is he going to get a ton of opportunity? No. 1.5 targets per game, 9% target share. But that ADOT, if he catches a bomb, well, obviously things can look pretty good. Drake London, I hate Drake London. He gets targets in this offense, but they don't equate to much. We're talking just over 3.5 catches per game on 41 receiving yards, despite a 29% target share. I hate him. He's playable, though. It's a showdown slate, but I do hate Drake London. And the rest of the guys, it's just, if that's how much money you have left in your lineup, sure, go for it. But they're definitely only tournament plays because you also have to factor in Kyle Pitts is going to get his as well. And moving back over to our lineup, like I said, I love DJ Moore in this slate. And it's probably going to be something pretty popular to do, but I don't care. I make the rules here. We're plugging him in the captain spot, $13,800. And moving on to the tight end spot, we'll start with the Falcons here first, which is basically just Kyle Pitts, everyone's love child on Twitter. Guy who just underperforms just about every single time. But on a showdown slate, I mean, you're kind of forced into having some interest here. He's $7,000. He's the second pass catching option in this offense in terms of targets. Just under 5.5 per game, 27% target share. She's not equating to much though. Not even 3 catches per game and not even 40 receiving yards, quarter of a touchdown per game. Those have come in recent weeks. Pretty good ADOT for a tight end though. I mean, 14.1. He's all right. I mean, looking at how the Panthers have fared versus tight ends, very noisy stat, but obviously they've not been a great pass defense this year. Like, I'm fine with Kyle Pitts. He's not a absolute must-play jam in. Like, he's so underpriced kind of guy. But at $7,000, if I have Mariota, I would prefer getting Pitts and over a guy like Drake London personally. And then you have these bums, Parker Hesse and Michael Pruitt. They play, they get snaps, but Falcons will use multiple tight ends, but they don't really get enough targets to be relevant. Like, yeah, Hesse's on the field, he gets just under a target per game. If you need an absolute punch, sure, go for it, but it's not something I can recommend. And maybe you got like Pruitt just happens to catch a random goal line touchdown, but that's really all you're banking on. And then for the Panthers, pretty much 2 guys here, Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas. Tremble would be the guy I prefer. Thomas, I believe, has like 1 target the past 2 weeks. Tremble, on the other hand, has got 8 combined. Did get into the end zone, I want to say last week, or was the week prior, or I might be making that up. I know he scored very recently. I remember seeing it. But Tremble would be the one I prefer. He's $3,200. Like, I know he's $1,200 more than Ian Thomas, but I feel like in this offense, currently the past few weeks, Tremble's been the one that you've wanted because he's been more featured. And plus, he's got an ADOT of 9.8 compared to 3.1 to Thomas. And then moving on to the defenses, we got a low total here. Both are certainly going to be in play any single time you see Marcus Mariota and PJ Walker on the schedule. Yeah, I mean, the defenses against them are going to be in play. Although, like I said, last time this game went off, I mean, both defenses are pretty bad, so sometimes that can happen, but it's a Thursday night game. These seem to always underperform, so I would certainly be fine getting some defense exposure on both sites. Probably not in the captain spot, though. And then for the kickers, we have Younghoe Koo and then Eddie Pinheiro. 2 fun names there. Kickers and defenses on showdown slates, especially on Thursdays, it always seems to be a recipe for success, so while they're not always going to be my most favorite plays in the world, I'm fine with just jamming them in the flex spot for sure. And then moving over to the lineup to finish this off, we got 2 spots left, $10,600 to do it. If we wanted to play a kicker, we could go with Koo here. Would expect the Falcons to be able to put up some more points. That leaves us with $6,400 left for the last spot. Don't love that. Obviously, can't play any of the backup quarterbacks. I don't really love what that leaves you with. So honestly, if you wanted to upgrade one of these quarterbacks to a guy like Patterson on this slate, let's say we dump Mariota, because we got more in the captain spots. I feel like I'd rather get tied to PJ Walker. Plug in Patterson, leaves you $4,800 left. That feels a little bit better. Huntley, don't really want to play him. Bird's fine. Pinheiro, we already have the other kicker in. So you could go double kicker there. Could take any of these guys. If you wanted to plug somebody else in the captain spot, obviously you could do that. But anyways, you can go. Please don't just copy and paste this because I built 150. Not sure which one I'm going to like the most as of right now. And like I said, I did want to run a quick 150 here to see who's popping the most as of right now. And these could change by the time game time rolls around. This was my first initial update on the projections. But put the players tab here just to see who's popping. Lots of DJ Moore, lots of PJ Walker. Not too surprised about those two, especially on Moore. I think the price is a little bit too low. I do personally think he's the best play on the slate. Although, you know, being the best play on the slate is never a guarantee that you're going to absolutely smash. So just keep that in mind. Lots of Mariota, Chuba Hubbard, 55% there. Pinheiro, Koo, the kickers are popping nearly 40% of the time. Looks like the top captain option was Marcus Mariota, then DJ Moore, then actually Hubbard at that price point. So he is still questionable for this game, so keep in mind he's not a lock to play. But if he does play, he has a similar role to what I'm expecting. I mean, that price point's still pretty good. But yeah, not at all surprised at who's popping the most as of right now. But if you are someone that does play 150, make sure you have your settings there. You can't just raw dog it. You got to do your groups and things like that. A little bit of randomness mixed in because if you're just running it raw like this, your lineups are probably not going to be that correlated and probably a bit of a mess. But with that being said, guys, that'll be it for the video. So I hope you did enjoy. And if you did, make sure to leave a like on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. Wish you all the best of luck and try your best to enjoy the game.